I think we're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Survivor podcast. It's just me, Ryan, here today. Dylan is unfortunately busy with work, but we wanted to make sure you guys had some type of episode recap and content for this week. Hopefully, we're back to our normal time slot on Thursday night, but stay tuned to our Twitter to see if we'll still go live then. But yeah, we're here to cover episode 6 of Survivor 44, the Mergatory, as it's been for the last couple of seasons. As always, before we get started, whenever I do this by myself, I'll try to go through the episode recap pretty quick, go through my thoughts, but obviously it's more interactive and fun if people in the comments have any questions or feedback to share. So if anything comes in the chat, I'm more than happy to go through it as we go through the episode rather than just doing all the questions at the end. So maybe on the shorter side tonight, but we'll still see if we can get through everything in tonight's podcast. But yeah, episode 6, the Mergatory. Josh, our headline tonight, Josh gets voted out in a 7-3-1 vote. He gets voted out by most of the tribe here, obviously, with Jam Jam getting 3 votes from Brandon, Kane, and Josh. And then Carolyn votes for Kane. So what it seems like, it seems like in the end, it was a split vote to protect against the idol. It sounds like from what we saw at the Merge feast that most people in the Merge tribe wanted Josh to go home. Josh is a name that's been brought up for the last couple of weeks now. After Josh got kind of a quiet edit the first couple of weeks, we've seen recently that both on former Soka and the new Tika, Josh was the name that was getting thrown around a good amount. So, people always say this in Survivor, former players say this, like once a name is brought up, it's very hard for that name to just go back under the radar. Like that name is always going to be out there, possibly as a decoy. And that's why people always get offended, like Carolyn did back with Jam Jam when back at the Sarah votes, she's like, I don't want to be the decoy vote. I was the decoy last time and I don't respect being the decoy, because once your name is out there, it's really tough to get it to go under again. So, Josh was clearly the name here, and then they wanted to throw out possibly Jam Jam and Kane as backup votes in case Josh had the idol. Now, I have a couple mixed thoughts on this episode. It wasn't my favorite episode, a couple mixed feelings here or there. I feel like my biggest problem with the episode was a couple things. Number one, it was not very clear in terms of who was voting for who and who is working with who, because in the end, it does seem like it was a split vote to protect against the idol. But the problem was right away, my first thought was, okay, well, Brandon votes for Jam Jam. Was Brandon left out of the vote? But no, he couldn't be left out of the vote because he wanted to vote for Kane, because Kane wrote his name down at the first tribal council. And then I realized, okay, well, then it was probably a split. But Josh and Kane were part of that split, and they were the other 2 decoy names. So it was a bit confusing. All we really know from the alliances is obviously you have the former Tikas, you have Carolyn, Carson, and Jam Jam. You then have the showmans of Franny and Matt, who it seems like they're still working with Danny and Heidi, although we haven't seen that recently. We really don't know what the dynamics of former Ratu are. I think Brandon's working with Lauren. Brandon and Kane don't seem to want to work together, possibly, after that first tribal. So while a split vote at the Merge is not, uncommon, I just feel like it should have been more clear to us with the edits. Okay, these people are working together, and the majority saying, all right, we are going to split the vote mainly on Josh. We're going to throw a couple of votes on Jam Jam just in case he has an idol. Because then Carolyn votes for Kane, and you have to think, well, did Carolyn get left out of the vote? Was she just throwing a hinky vote on purpose? And when we get back to camp next week, I wonder if Carolyn is going to own up to it, because Carolyn obviously is a very smart, astute player, but she's also very emotional and vocal. And I could see a scenario where she says nothing, or she says, yeah, Kane, I'll own up to it, which maybe wouldn't be the smartest thing for her to do. But yeah, it was just a bit confusing in terms of where the votes were going, which is also weird because it was a very straightforward vote. Like I'm sure people in the comments or anybody watching could agree. I felt like the minute the episode started that Josh was going home. I just felt like the minute that they open up with him on former Tika, and he's like, I'm looking forward to separating from Carolyn and Jam Jam. I want to get back with Soka, but the former Sokas don't want to work with him. And then he's telling people at the merge that I have an idol. No, I have a fake idol. It seemed pretty clear to me that Josh's days were numbered. So I felt like even though they were trying to sidetrack us and throw us off the scent by saying, oh, it could be Jam Jam, it could be Kane, I really felt like it was going to be Josh the whole episode. Now, the thing with that is normally I don't mind a straightforward week. You know, you always think on Survivor, you want it to be a big blindside to the person and to the viewers. You want to be shocked. But I just feel like for better storytelling, I almost would rather it be obvious who's going home, but we get a clear narrative on how we get there. We know who's working with who's having the conversations, how will this impact someone after the vote is finished. I'd rather see that than get to tribal council. And I distinctly remember this happened, I think, in Winners at War with Tyson or with not Sophie's vote. It probably was Tyson's vote, where I had no idea who was voting for who. I left that episode extremely confused. So while this was an obvious vote, and I appreciate that, and I think it makes for better storytelling, I just feel like it could have been more apparent to us who is working together and who are the alliances. But yeah, I mean, I guess to do a quick obituary on Josh before we get to the rest of the episode recap. And hey, Jay, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them in the chat and I'll cover them as they come through. I mean, Josh is somebody who, like I said earlier, had a pretty quiet edits when the show started. People were saying that he's getting the purple edits, like the purple Kelly edits. Now that's kind of going to, I guess, Heidi and Lauren in a way. But no, Josh was pretty quiet. Then we see him go to Tika. And ever since then, it kind of felt like the Owen effect with like the Charlie Brown and the football, where everything Josh did just was not working out for him. And people were targeting Josh pretty early on. I mean, we felt like Josh could be in a good spot because after Claire left, he's sitting in between two pairs of Danny and Heidi and Franny and Matt. So we think, oh, he's a perfect swing vote here. But in the episode where he goes over to Tika, we see Franny say in confessional, well, you know what? We wanted to get Josh out, and now we just missed our chance, and Josh was on the outs here. And we never really understood why Josh was on the outs because the Green Tribe never lost. They lost one challenge out of 8, I think. They had a really good record. And the only piece of evidence that we get why Josh was on the outs is because I guess Claire said he's kind of not shady because it sounds rude, shady, sneaky, but he was kind of just, maybe people felt like he was scheming in a way. People didn't know if they could trust Josh. Now, Josh says in his exit press after the season, maybe a reason for that is because, with his symptom where he had the I think the kidney transplant or the operation that he had to save his life, I think from stomach cancer or whatever Josh had. Josh was kind of struggling physically out there, so maybe he was just kind of being quiet. He was, he was achy, he was in pain, so maybe he just didn't have the best impression sometimes. Maybe people just didn't feel like they could work with him, or he was kind of sketchy in that way. But that's the only reason we got why Josh's name just kept coming up. Now it's clear that some of his reads weren't the best, and the fake idol did not go over pretty well. But I do feel bad that Josh was kind of put in a little bit of a bad spot, and it's kind of tough sometimes with these three groups. Jay asks in the chat, wouldn't it be kind of the opposite since Josh was so lucky to escape a limb 3 times in a row? I mean, yeah, Josh obviously was very lucky. I mean, Jay's right. I mean, let's just say the tribes, like the last 3 seasons, there's no swap. And Green goes to tribal council after they lose Claire. I mean, Josh is pretty much going to be going home there, I think, for sure. Then in the next episode, I mean, Sarah does go home, but he could have been the vote. He could have been the vote possibly. Then in the next episode, it would have been Josh if Matthew doesn't pull himself from the game due to his injury. So yeah, out of the last 3 times before this episode, Josh was in the most danger by far. So I do think Josh got very lucky, but I also don't think he did himself a lot of favors in terms of some of the things he was doing. The biggest mistake I would say Josh made at the merge, because you could argue, well, wait, now that they've merged or mergatory, like, yeah, and you're also right that he got lucky because he also had an idol from being swapped. And Dylan and I went over that at length in terms of them just handing out idols left and right. There's a million idols nowadays. So he got lucky with that as well, because if he didn't have that idol, I think he would have gone home there too instead of Sarah, possibly, but Carolyn still could have tied it. But I think the mistake Josh made at the merge was I feel like he was still playing too messy, and I feel like he was still trying to cause confusion, because Rob and Steve mentioned this on their podcast, and Rob and Steven were like, well, at the merge, if Josh's name is coming up, maybe if there's other people that could be targets, maybe he can kind of lay low and reacclimate himself with others. I think the problem was, like I said, he's telling people he has a real idol. He's telling Jamie he has a fake idol. Brandon thinks he has one. Matt thinks he has one. Granted, Matt thinks he has the real one too. But Josh is trying to cause confusion. And his thought process was, in his exit press, if I cause confusion, people might not want to vote for me because they don't know what I have, and maybe they'll look elsewhere. I think the problem is, if you're a player like Josh and your name is already coming up, then I think people want to, not to use the chessboard as a pun from Tribal Council, but I think people want to move that chaotic piece off the board. I feel like if Josh had just come into the merge and he said, look, I don't have an idol. I have this fake idol that fell apart. Jam and Carolyn know I'm a bad liar. I'm on the bottom. People don't want to work with me. I'm not a threat. If Josh came into the merge kind of like, Eeyore, like, oh, poor me, I'm on the outs, I'm on the bottom, I think he would have not been seen as a threat. And I think people would have maybe turned elsewhere. Now, I don't know if Jam would have gone home in that case because he was part of the losing group, or maybe Kane would have went home. But I just feel like he wasn't doing himself any favors by causing this confusion. If he had just played it up a bit more humble and said, like, I don't have anything and I really have no power, maybe he could have extended his life a little bit more. But like I said, when you have a name out there, Josh's days kind of felt numbered for a while, unless something really drastic happened. Jay also says, but if Matt thought Josh had the real one, wouldn't Matt believe that he himself has a fake? So this is the problem that with all these idols and with these fake notes, is because not only do the players not know what's real and fake, I don't know if they know what's real or fake. Because here's the problem. I was under the impression Matt thought his idol was real. That was my impression. I thought Danny had the real one. He plants the fake one for Matt to find. Danny has the real one. Matt has the fake one. I come into tonight, and for some reason, I'm seeing Matt's confessionals, because Matt got a lot of confessionals tonight, and it sounds like Matt's saying, well, Josh might have the idol, which to me makes me think Matt realizes he has a fake. So then I say to myself, why does he think he has the fake? Because earlier on, he believes he has the real one. And what I believe happened was that, and this is why this is so confusing. I hope it's not confusing for others out there. But the problem is, I think in the exit press, Claire kept saying to us that she almost tried to tip Franny off that, like, maybe Matt doesn't have the real one, because she was talking to someone on the sit-out bench. Maybe it was like Jamie or Heidi. She was talking to somebody, or maybe it was Matthew. She was talking about the cage idols. And I think when she was talking about the situation and how there was only one thing in there, as opposed to the two that Brandon found, I think Claire put two and two together and was like, oh, maybe Matt has a fake. So maybe Matt and Franny are now like a bit concerned or cautious that Matt does have a fake or real one. But now I see a secret scene or a preview for next week. I can't remember if it was a secret scene from this week or a preview for next week, but it's just Matt and Franny saying, we like each other, we're in a good spot. And Matt's like, I have the idol. So now I don't know at all whether Matt thinks he has the real one or he thinks he has the fake. So I really don't know what the situation is here. But either way, from what we see tonight or from Wednesday, it was pretty clear that Matt felt like Josh had the idol. And I feel like if Josh had just said, I had nothing, people may have believed him in that case. So other than that, I guess we'll get back to the top of the episode, and then we can always reconvene back to some of the pre-tribal scrambling. Any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I have a few questions and topics of my own. Some not spoiler, but some might be like some new information. So I'll save that for the end in case people want to wait for that. That'll be towards the last part of the podcast. And yeah, I do agree with Jay. I think, Franny is getting a better edit than Matt. I think we're seeing Matt more in confessionals because he has the fake idol. But I do feel like Franny seems a bit more savvy. Her head seems more in the game a little bit from the edits. And I really feel like if one of them is going to outlast the other, I feel like Franny is going to outlast Matt. That's my thoughts. But we get to the top of the episode, and this is what I was saying earlier, where we see Josh is with Tika, and he's looking forward to separating from Carolyn and Jam Jam, and it's almost like, it's like dramatic irony because, we know something that he doesn't, and he's like, I'm going to get back with Heidi and Danny and Franny and Matt, and the former Sokas are going to run this game, and little does he know that they all want to get rid of him anyway. So when your own former tribe wants to get rid of you, that's a pretty bad spot. And I also don't know if that's good strategy on their part to immediately turn on one of their own, because I don't think Josh was ever going to turn on them from what it sounded like. I feel like what we see with Survivor sometimes is at the merge, tribes are, I'm curious if people agree, tribes seem almost too eager to flip on their own, especially when you have a tribe that doesn't lose. Like, Soka this season, you can look at like Timbira from Tocantins. You can look at Galoo from Samoa, Tandang from Philippines, who never lost. Like, these tribes that never lose, they're so quick to turn on their own. Now, I don't think this is going to come back to bite Franny and Matt and Danny and Heidi, but I feel like it's still too soon, and I feel like Josh was not going to turn on you. I mean, you could have gotten rid of Josh at 9, at 8, and, now you possibly risk, because for all there's now 4 of you. But what if Purple and Orange team up? What if Carson, Jam Jam, and Carolyn are like, we're kind of any matter scary? And what if they team up? Now you're in a minority. Whereas if you kept Josh, you may have had an extra number there. So I feel like people are just too quick to turn on some of their own the minute they hit merge. But then we get to Tree Mail, where all tribes are going to get onto one beach, but they know because of the new era, that means they're not officially merged yet, though. And before they all come together, I like what Carson did here. Carson goes to Brandon and Lauren and Kane, and he says to them, hey, I went on that journey when I came over to this new tribe, and I got this idol, but it's a pre-merge idol with a shot clock, and it's no longer good. And I wanted to let you guys know that because I would have used it for us. I can't use it for us anymore. It has no power. I want to show you I'm not hiding anything coming into merge. So I felt like Carson did a couple things tonight, some of which I liked, some of which I didn't like. But this was a good move. I think that you gained some trust there. And I don't think they can ever blame him for this. I don't think they can say, oh, Carson had this idol. He told us right before merge. That was kind of sneaky of him. I mean, they all have to know, like, he was on the bottom heading into this brand new tribe because he's clearly outnumbered, and he would have saved himself with that shot clock idol if he needed to. So I think this gains some trust between him and Kane. Him and Kane already have a good bond. I don't know how close he and Lauren are or how close he is to Brandon. Doesn't seem like they're that close, but I think this maybe bought him some goodwill with the former Ratus. So between the Ratus and the former Tikas, even though Carolyn and Jam Jam, in my opinion, are still the main characters of the show, Carson's right up there as well. Carson, I think, is a main character of the show. And I think Carson also is the best positioned because I don't think Jam Jam, while getting a lot of edits and a lot of screen time, I don't think he's in the best spot, right, clearly. And even though Carolyn has really good reads on the game, I don't necessarily know if Carolyn, could be the absolute best positioned. I think she's in a good spot, but I think Carson is just in a better spot. Yeah. And we know nothing about Lauren. I mean, I was talking to my friend, and I'll get more into this later in the podcast, but he was like, I have no idea who Lauren is. I have no idea who Heidi is. He was like, I barely know Jamie other than her being very confident, which was annoying for him a little bit. But he was like, I really don't know a lot of these players because it's been the Carolyn and Jam Jam show. I think the hard part is that when you have a season like this and one tribe just keeps losing, you're going to have to show that tribe. So people are going to naturally fall by the wayside unless you have a lot of great characters. But I think that's why we just really don't know about some of these players, and we're at the final 11 already. Yeah. So also, before we get to the official merge, Lauren then tells the players that she has an extra vote. So we were just talking about Lauren. The only thing we know about Lauren is that she has an extra vote because of the bank of votes advantage at the first tribal council. Now, this, I feel like, also could buy her some goodwill, but the problem is the others already know it. I'm pretty sure Matthew told everybody on that tribe, Kane, Brandon, formerly Jamie, I think he told everybody Lauren has this. So I don't know if people can trust her anymore. I'm sure some people do, but it's not like Carson telling people about the pre-merge idol that buys him some goodwill. I feel like Lauren may have helped herself a little bit, but they all know that she's had this for a long time. She could be getting an under the radar Erica edit, like Jay says. Look, I don't want to get too deep into the edits, but either she could just be getting an under the radar Erica edits, but people would go crazy because that'd be 2 winners in the last 4 years that have gotten very little airtime. Or this could be a player that makes it to final 4 or 5, but they don't have a big impact on the end game, so we don't have to see them a lot. And maybe that's what. Oh, I think my mic got disconnected. If this is a really good edit, then I feel like it's just so hard to read the edit nowadays. But basically, now this is what I was saying earlier. We get to the merge, and Josh is telling people, some people, I have an idol. Then he's saying to other people, I have a fake idol. Okay, thanks, Jay. I appreciate it. Yeah, something's happening with the mic. I'm not sure if it's the internet or the mic, but we'll keep going. But basically, he's telling some people he has a real idol. He's telling some people he has a fake idol. And that's what I was saying earlier, where he's causing confusion. And I feel like those who trusted him a little bit aren't going to trust him now. And those who didn't trust him before certainly aren't going to want to work with him going forward. I feel like if you're causing that chaos, they're going to want to remove that chaos from the board. Look, I'm not trying to compare Josh to Abby Maria because those are 2 completely different players and characters. But it's not a coincidence that, Lisa and Michael could have kept Abby instead of Malcolm and Denise, who were bigger threats, but they get rid of Abby just because they didn't want to be with her anymore when that was the easier path. And I feel like if Josh is not causing a lot of confusion and he's making it an easier path for people, they're going to want to keep him around. If he's making it very confusing, it's just better if he's not in the game anymore. But before we even get to the challenge, we see, Franny saying, I think Josh should be the vote. This is like we see nothing of Lauren tonight. We see almost nothing from Heidi. The only thing we get from Jamie, yeah, I know, right? That was a really deep comparison. They're not similar at all. It was just the whole thought process of like people who, if they play their cards right and they lay low, they can get farther. But because they cause drama or chaos, they go home sooner than they should have. And I feel like that's just the one comparison that I had. But yeah, we don't see Jamie or Lauren or Heidi. The only thing we see from Jamie is, once again, she's super confident. I'm the most important person on this camp. I have a magic wand. I feel like this is setting up for a Jamie downfall at some point, maybe with her fake idol. But Franny's telling everybody, I think Josh should be the vote. And Jam Jam is talking to Matt in the water, and Jam Jam is like, I'm a bit nervous. I feel like I'm on the outs. And even Matt is like, no, I think Josh is going to be a dangerous player. I think you should write Josh's name down. And this is where we see Josh and Jam Jam Oh, thanks, Jay. I don't know why I'm buffering bad here. All right. Hopefully that fixes it. Unfortunately, Dylan's not here. Ironically, the one night that Dylan's not here this season, I'm getting all these different tech problems. But I appreciate. We'll probably go for like another 20 minutes and then probably stop it there just to finish recapping the episode. So basically, we're now at the point where we get to, before the challenge, one last thing. So in addition to Josh and Jam Jam wanting to target each other, we see the former Tikas get back together, the Three Stooges, Carolyn, Carson, and Jam Jam. And they are like, you know what, we were separated, but we want to work together. And this is giving like a Matt Singh. This is really feeling like an underdog Foa type story where the underdogs are going to try to rise up and get to the end of the game. I mean, if you tell me that these three players are the final three or they all get to final five, yeah, I feel like these players could go very far in the game. Let me just check the internet settings really quickly. I'm not sure why the internet is having some issues here. Says I'm still connected. Problem is that if Dylan was here, I could just drop, let Dylan continue, and then I could come back in. But yeah, give me 1 second. Okay. All right. I will keep going as much as I can. Okay. So basically, now we get to the challenge after we see Carson, Carolyn, and Jam Jam talk. Okay. So basically now at the challenge, we get mergatory. We see that players are going to be split into two teams as they always are, roll a boulder through an obstacle course, go up the curve ramp, solve a puzzle, and the winning tribe is safe. They get their merge buffs, they get a feast, and they're safe at tribal. The 6 losers are vulnerable, and one of them is going to go home. Everybody will vote. There will be 12 votes at tribal council, but only 6 people can get votes. And luckily, just like last season, there's no more hourglass. Thank God. It's just if you win, you're safe. But we get these 2 different groups. We get Brandon, Carolyn, Carson, Franny, Jamie, and Matt on purple. So basically the Showmance, Carolyn and Carson, Jamie and Brandon. Then we get Danny, Heidi, Kane, Josh, Lauren, and Jam Jam on orange. And purple is going to win. They're going to win the immunity, which is the Carolyn and Carson group, and they're going to get their feast. I just want to say, and if anybody's watching, I would love to know people's questions and comments in the chat here. I'm getting a little frustrated with people and the puzzles and people practicing. Now, look, I want to preface by saying I think Carson is awesome. This is not against Carson. This is against production. Because if you know that production's going to use the same puzzles over and over again, it's good if you practice. Like if I knew I was going out there, I would practice the tree. I would practice the spinning blocks. I would practice the slide puzzle. I would practice the 5-piece puzzle. Any puzzle that comes up often, I would practice. I would practice it. So I don't blame Carson at all. And good for him for printing it out. Although if you don't have a 3D printer, the bat puzzle, yeah, 3D printer. Or you can, if you don't have a printer, you can buy them on Etsy. They sell for like 15 to 20 bucks on Etsy, I think. But you can practice these puzzles. So I don't blame Carson at all. He's taking advantage of all of his resources. I get mad at production when you have players like a Carson or even like a Matthew who was practicing the snake maze vertical puzzle in his backyard, he was said. When players are starting to break the game, you need new puzzles. And I've been talking to some of my friends. I've been listening to other podcasts. And honestly, people have been saying for a while now, the challenges are getting kind of stale. We need new challenges, maybe go back to some old challenges back in the day, but we need a revamp because some of these are getting kind of predictable and a little boring, and people are practicing the puzzles. And luckily, it's just Carson and Matthew and a few others. I mean, we're gonna get to a point where if they don't stop with these same challenges and they don't change it up, we're gonna get to a point where you're gonna have half the cast, like 10, 11 people, 12 people, you're gonna have half the cast practicing puzzles, and it's just gonna come down to who can do it faster. Like they're just gonna be memorizing it. And I hate to say it, but like I was texting my sister, I was texting my friend, and I was like, I knew the minute Purple had Carson, I knew they were going to win. I would have bet any amount of money, like minus 1,000 odds, whatever you want to give me on the odds. I would have bet Purple was going to win because I just knew, and it's so predictable. Carson does amazing at the puzzle. We get a confessional where we see a flashback of him doing this in his house. And I just feel like they have to change it up. The problem is you have Jeff Probst saying, on his podcast, I feel like I think he likes when people practice because Jeff's like, oh, it's awesome. I love when people practice. I love when fans and players want to do so well and earn it. And I feel like that's what Jeff says. And I think he likes it now, but once everyone is just memorizing puzzles and doing it with their eyes closed, he'll be like, all right, we got to change up the challenges. I mean, as I've said on this podcast recently, yeah, I agree. It is a little ridiculous. But, you know, I have watched Australian Survivor, as people know recently, Heroes versus Villains, and a top 10 amazing season. And their challenges always feel fresh and different. They could do more puzzles, but I feel like I always see something new there. So I feel like they could maybe take a page out of their book, for example. So now we get to the Merge Feast, and kind of circling back to where we started tonight, Josh's name is brought up again as a target. So in case he has an idol, they talk about Kane as the backup vote, because out of this group that's going to be in danger tonight, because obviously Brandon, Carolyn, Carson, the Showmance, and Jamie are safe, Danny's going to be fine. No one's mentioning Danny's name. No one's mentioning Heidi's name because Heidi's gotten no airtime, and I don't think people see her as a threat. And Lauren has the extra vote, but I don't think people want to go after Lauren just yet. So it was always going to be one of Kane, Jam Jam, or Josh. And everybody, both on his former tribe and some of the other people, are saying, yeah, Josh may have an idol. He should go. Yeah, I mean, Jeff is not going to probably take anything from Australian Survivor, unfortunately. But basically, Carolyn then speaks up and says, I can't do a Carolyn impression. Also, I feel like I need some water. I feel like I can't do the Carolyn impression at all. But she tries to tell them, like, Josh doesn't have an idol. Josh doesn't have an idol. But no one is listening to her. And this is the theme of the season, where Carolyn, from episode 1 to last week at the Journey, she's always underestimated, and no one is taking her seriously, which could be a good thing, obviously, because I think that can lead her going even farther. But the only thing that could be an issue is if she gets to the end, she might not be able to explain her game. I'm sorry, she can explain her game because she's a fan of the show. She plays online Survivor games. But if people don't take her seriously, they may not want to vote for her, or they may feel like, no, you didn't really lead a lot of votes. You had no agency in the game. So for her sake, I hope she's getting the airtime and she's getting the content to where she could be a worthy winner candidate. But you could also tell me she's going to get no votes because people aren't going to believe that she did anything, and that wouldn't surprise me. But she's right. The thing about Carolyn is that she obviously comes off as a wacky character, but she's very aware. She's awkward, but she's very aware of herself, and she's aware of other people. She knows who's voting for who. She knows, who has what. And she's like, Josh doesn't have an idol. And everyone's like, but what if he does? what if he does? I think, we should maybe vote for Jam Jam and Kane as a backup just in case Josh has an idol. But they'll have to listen to her eventually. But then we get back to camp after the merge feast, and Carson tells Kane that his name was brought up. And Kane then goes back to Brandon and said, hey, I'm not going to say who, but I heard my name was brought up. So this was the second thing that Carson did. I said earlier that I liked that Carson told people about the pre-merge idol. I thought it garnered some goodwill. This, I had some mixed thoughts, and I was talking to my family and some friends about this. And, I don't love this from Carson. I mean, look, on the positive side, he's telling Kane that his name is brought up. Now, on Survivor, you always want to have an alliance member, and you always want to have somebody where you say, like, look, if I hear your name, I'll let you know. If you hear my name, just tell me. Just so you have another pair of ears listening out for you. So he wants to keep Kane as an option, which if Carson already has his former tribe and other people like him, like Kanan on the former Ratus, I think this is great for him. I just feel like he could have handled it a little bit better because Kane runs right to Brandon. Now, luckily for Carson, Kane didn't throw him under the bus. He didn't say, Carson said that you guys threw out my name. Brandon, you in particular, you threw out my name. So at least it didn't go that poorly, but I think it could have gone worse. And I will give Carson a little bit more credit because when Brandon goes to him and says, dude, how did he know? His name was brought up. Did you say something to him? And Carson at least played this off well. Carson wasn't like, oh, I did it and it was a good move and I own it. It's like he wasn't smug about it and Brandon didn't get mad at him. Carson kind of played it up like the dorky nerd that he is. And he's like, oh, should I have done that? Oh, I'm sorry. That was a bad move. What was I thinking? And I feel like the oh shucks routine will work with Carson because he's 20, 21. He's a young kid, obviously very smart, NASA. But, he's still a young kid. And if he comes off as impressionable and he comes off as, someone's little brother, it feels like he does not get a lot of blowback. So I think both of these moves ended up going well for Carson. But I do think it was a little dicey that he went to Kane and then Kane could have screwed it up. I think in the end, it worked out for him. A couple last things, and then we can get to some questions and comments. If Jay or other people that are watching have any questions or comments, put them in the chat and I will get to them. So after we have this whole Carson and Kane situation, I think this is where we see Josh and Jam Jam again. And I think this is where we see Josh and Jam Jam. They have such a complex relationship. Like they want to work together, but they can't trust each other. And they don't want to write each other's names down, but they're going to vote for each other once again. And they're like, how about we just vote Kane? And we don't vote each other. But they're going to put each other's names down. But Kane is now going to go to other people and say, like, look, I think Josh has an idol. And if I'm the backup vote, I'm going to go home. So I think we should vote for Jam Jam. And this is where, like I said at the start of the episode, it was just very confusing in terms of who was voting for who and who was part of the split. It really seems like, other than Kane, who voted for Jam Jam out of self-preservation, just in case of an idol, and Josh went home, I think every other person, so the other 9 people, I think we're in on the splits. Carolyn votes Kane maybe as part of the split. So does Brandon. Brandon votes for Jam Jam as part of the splits. It really does seem like it was just a pretty simple split vote to get Josh out. But I wish we saw more from the episode in terms of where people were voting. Because, it's also better storytelling if people are going to vote like, okay, you 5 vote for Josh, you 4 vote for Jam Jam. And then someone goes, but if I flip my votes, I can send this person home and that's better for my game. And I would have liked to have seen those confessionals rather than just the classic, is it going to be Josh? Is it going to be Jam Jam? Is it going to be Kane? So that's what I wish we would have seen. But that's basically the episode recap. We can get to some questions and comments in the chat. And then I have a couple of quick questions and talking points of my own, and then we'll kind of wrap it up here. Jay is saying, yeah, exactly. Why did Carolyn vote for Kane if she wanted Josh out? And by the same token, why did Brandon not vote for Kane if Brandon kind of wanted Kane out? Yeah, I just think in the end it was part of a split. I think everyone was in on it. Watch what we see on Wednesday when we open up the episode and Carolyn's like, I was left out. That could easily happen. So I think she voted for Kane just as a backup to Josh, because obviously she's not going to write Jam Jam's name down. Like, obviously Carolyn knows, okay, if everyone's voting for Josh and one person votes for Jam Jam in case of an idol, Jam Jam could go home. So I'm going to vote for Kane to save my ally Jam Jam as a backup option. I think that's what happened, but she could have been left out of the vote. I guess we'll have to see next week, which I guess is in 2 days. Then Jay says, why didn't they show Soka and Ratsu's reaction to Matthew leaving? I don't know. I guess they just ran out of time. I would have liked to have seen their reactions, but I mean, listen, sometimes they show this. Like I even remember back on Ghost Island, there was the Bradley vote. And I remember, and this is well before I was podcasting with Dylan, but Bradley got voted out right before the merge. And he was really close allies with Kellen. And Dominic and Chelsea flip on Bradley, and they vote with Donathan and Libby to take out Bradley. And I was like, oh, I can't wait till next week. I can't wait until we see Kellen's reaction and Wendell's reaction that I can't remember the tribe names. I think it was like Navidi, the Purples, Navidi. I can't believe that Navidi flipped on their own and we never saw the reaction to it. So I think sometimes we see these reactions to people leaving the game or flips, and sometimes we never do. And I just think it's whatever the edit wants to show us. And I guess because this is still early in the game, so to say, maybe they're like, it wasn't going to have a big bearing. But Kanan and a few others were looking for something in the jungle in the preview, and there was a shot of a key hanging from a tree. Will they bring back the birdcage? So they could bring back the birdcage. I feel like they kind of got out of it what they wanted to. They got one tribe finds it together. They got one tribe having somebody trick another person into getting a fake, and then it happening again. However, in one of the tribes, someone did a better job of it, Danny, than Carolyn did, because Carolyn took both out by accident. So I guess they could bring it back. I don't know what they would want to get out of it, though. I mean, we all know that I would prefer less twists in general, but I guess they could put an idol back in there. I mean, you just know that they want to put the frickin' they want to put back the inheritance back in there because it went home with Sarah, and they're not going to let a brand new toy go to waste. So if they do have a key in a cage, it could be the inheritance advantage coming back, possibly. Speaking of twists, one question that I want to talk about and pose to the audience is what do we think is going to happen next week? So this is where, yeah, exactly, Jay. So what I will do right now is we're at 43 minutes. These next two topics are, if you don't want to like know what comes up in coming attractions and you don't like to watch previews because of spoilers, then you can tune out. Just going to be covering what the commercial showed. Nothing like leaks, like no leaks, just basically whatever the commercial showed. But basically next week, we see Jeff saying like the person who wins immunity will have no power. And right away, we're like, oh my God, what is this? Like, Jeff, stop with the twists. Just give us a normal episode, no bells and whistles. And of course, now we have, if you win an immunity, you have no power. So what do we think next week's twist is? So I was texting with my friend and my sister, and I was trying to think like what could come up next week. And basically, I had a couple thoughts. The most obvious answer could just be, all right, we're at final 11. Whoever goes home tonight is the first member of the jury. So it's an important vote because not only is the jury starting, but it's also studies. I'm not a scientist. Studies show that the person who's the first member of the jury, like the jury mayor, the mayor of Ponderosa, they sometimes have a big sway in the jury. So it could be pretty important who you put there first, like Schnell or your Tiffany's or your Janine's, possibly. The most obvious thing that I think it could be is you win immunity, but you lose your vote. And also, by the way, not to keep complaining, but I'm also tired of people losing their votes. I feel like it was cute at first, but I don't need to have every episode wonder who has a vote and who doesn't. But I think it could just be as very simple as you win immunity and you lose your vote, possibly. Now, I feel like if you're safe at the merge, you're still going to go for it. You're not going to throw the challenge because you don't have your votes. So I think that's the most simple explanation. I could also see it being safety without power, where it's like you wear the necklace, although I guess this has the same effect, but you would go wearing the necklace and kind of like Jeremy, you get to tribal and safety without power. And then Jeff says, all right, you can go back to camp. You're done. So it could just be that. I mean, I also think it looks like they might split people up again. I don't really know what it could be, but those are my two guesses. In the chat, what Jay says is it could be the rice negotiation since it's been done at 11 before, but whoever sits out won't be able to vote. So interesting. So it could be the rice negotiation because we always see it around this time at the merge in the new era. But who would volunteer for this? Like whenever we've done the rice with the last 3 seasons, the people who sit out, they give up their chance to immunity. But if they lost their vote, like I don't care how valuable rice is out there, you're not going to get more than one. Maybe one person with an idol says, I will not vote tonight and I'll sit out of the challenge to get rice. But no one else is going to do that. You're not going to get people sitting out and saying, I'm just going to give up my vote, because your vote is probably the most important thing you have. More than an idol, more than immunity, your vote is maybe one of the most important things you have in this game. So I don't think that people will have that choice. I really hope it's not the case. I think it's an interesting idea. It could be the rice negotiation. I just keep going back to what Jeff said when he goes, if you win immunity, you have no power, or you'll have no say. So maybe they can't vote. I don't know. It could be another idea that I had, or that someone was talking to me about, was maybe it's like a challenge where, one person doesn't vote, where it's, granted, it could be like spliced, like it could be two clips, like Franken bit together, but maybe it's like the winner is fine, but the person who's out first can't vote. Like maybe that's what it is. Like, I don't know what it's going to be, but clearly there's going to be another twist. Speaking of advantages and twists, as always, Dylan and I want to give you our rundown of who has what. What I need to do is have like a whiteboard or some type of like piece of paper that I can like show people like what we have, because I feel like seeing it makes it much easier. But we'll do a quick recap as always of who has what, because I think people appreciate knowing what's on the game board, because sometimes even I forget. So at Final 11, with the jury starting at Merge next week, Carolyn and Danny have idols from the birdcage. So it's 2 idols in the game, which isn't terrible. It's fine. Brandon, Matt, and Jamie have fake idols. Brandon knows that his is fake because he found his with everybody else at the first episode. Jamie does not know hers is fake because Matthew went home and never told her, so she thinks she has an idol, but she doesn't. Now, Matt has a fake idol. I was going to come in here tonight and say he doesn't know that it's fake. He thinks that it's real like Jamie does. He and Jamie don't know it's fake. Brandon does. But tonight's confessionals, when he was like, Josh could have the idol, makes me pause. And I think to myself, maybe he is concerned his is fake and Josh had a real one in the end. But once again, we see in a secret scene or a preview, whatever it was, that Matt says, I have the idol. So I'll just go off of what I initially thought, and I'll say Brandon knows his is fake. Matt and Jamie thinks it's real, but they're all fake. Carolyn and Danny have the only real ones. And then finally, Lauren has the extra vote. And that's all the advantages. Unless there's any other questions or comments, I have one last thing to bring up that I saw on Twitter. So this is another rumor. If you don't want to hear rumors, feel free to hop out now. We'll probably be back on Thursday. But the rumor that we have from our good source at Redmond, Inside Survivor, Martin Holmes on Twitter, go check him out. Does great work. There's a rumor, if anybody saw this, that Survivor might be going to 90-minute episodes next season. Also, really quickly, I do agree with Jay. I'm tired of Earn the Merge. Just do a regular merge. Just go back to what we did. Keep it simple. Redmond reports from different sources that Survivor might be getting 90-minute episodes next season. It's not confirmed. I don't even think they went out there and they filmed yet. Maybe they're going to – I think they usually film the seasons back-to-back in May or June. So they're going to go out pretty soon. We don't know if it's new players, returnees. We don't know. But they're going to go out and film pretty soon. But Redmond reports – that it could be 90-minute episodes. And, people were saying to me, well, what's the reason for that? It could be for a couple of reasons. It could be because of a writer's strike, where if a show doesn't go on or, you don't have content for a show, you can just make Survivor 90 minutes to fill in half of that gap or kind of cover a half-hour show. Because if you have an hour time slot plus half an hour, you cover up a half-hour time show. Or if you need to fill an extra hour, you could do like Survivor for 90 minutes and do Amazing Race for 90 minutes. So you can kind of play around with it. So it really helps CBS's programming in case a show gets canceled or in case of a writer's strike. So I think it helps CBS. And I also think that if Jeff had the chance for the show, I think Jeff would say, I would love to have longer episodes. I think this is a great idea. So I'll give my Okay, I think I'm back. I'm getting the little internet symbols. Maybe this is the little hint that I got to wrap this up in the next 2 minutes. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm back. Okay. Really, really quickly. So my thought was that this is good. I feel like it's a great idea because you give more time, hopefully, for character interactions, character development, more screen time for people, and you get to maybe see more interactions between tribes. We always say we don't know who people are. People are like, I don't know who Lauren is, who Heidi is, who was Heather, who was, not Gabler, but who were some of these, Cassidy, who are these people that are players in the game, but we don't know them. If you have 90-minute episodes, you get to learn these people much more as characters, as players, as people. I think it's a great idea to get to know the cast better and to explore tribe dynamics. Here's the problem, though. What could happen is Jeff goes, I get 30 more minutes. I could put this twist in here and this advantage and this. And I feel like if Jeff uses this time for twists and gimmicks, I'm gonna flip my desk over. Jeff cannot, if they get 90 minutes, Jeff cannot use this time for advantages and idols and gimmicks. It has to be used for what's happening at camp, who's talking to who has an alliance but is having doubts about that alliance. I want to know the web, like the Pepe Sylvia. I want to know the web of who's connected to who's working with who, where is their doubt, all of that. So if they have 90 minutes, they can use that time well. However, I had some friends say to me, well, if it's 90 minutes, it's too long. I'm not going to pay attention. I would be fine if they brought back 90-minute episodes or brought 90-minute episodes and then they bring back previously on Survivor because you have now a lot more to recap for people. So I feel like there's a lot of things that you can do with this, honestly. I think if the rumor's true, I feel like this is a really great thing for the show. That's my perspective, and I feel like most people would agree. All right, but I think that's all we have tonight, unless there's any last-minute questions, because Internet's telling me, yes, and I want the intro show back as well. Give me the opening credits with the song. Give me the previously on 19-minute episodes. You give me that, I'm happy. You give me back 2 tribes, 39 days. That's even better. And maybe Jay's right. Maybe you split the baby. Maybe you say, okay, there's 13 episodes in a season. Some will be 90, some will be an hour. I'm totally fine with that as well. But that's all we have tonight. Thanks everyone for joining me today. Sorry for the internet issues. Not sure why that was. I think I had to switch a setting on my phone, which caused it earlier, but hopefully it'll be better next time. Or I'll make sure Dylan's here to help fix it next time. But basically, we will be back on Thursday, probably for episode 7. Stay tuned to our Twitter to see if we'll be going live then. But otherwise, thanks for being here. Appreciate all the interaction. And we will see you for the official merge next week. Grab your torches and head back to camp. Good night.